Love listening to the Blue Monday podcast? Well, your support is very much appreciated, and for as long as we're producing this podcast, we'll never charge you to listen to us. But if you do want to join others in supporting us financially, you can do just that via the Acast supporters feature. It's up to you how much or how little you want to give, and there is no regular commitment. Just hit the link in the show description. The money you donate may or may not be put towards Joe Fair's football shirt collection. Terms and conditions apply. Hello and welcome to the Blue Monday podcast, now in our 6th season, looking into the exciting happenings of Ipswich Town Football Club. This is the flagship show. My name is Mikey Smith, and on the weekend that Strictly Come Dancing returned to our screens, I'm joined by two proud dad dancers. It's Joe Fairs and Craig Fimbo. How are you both?
Yep, good. Cheers, Mikey.
Yes, thank you very much, mate.
Moves.
And neither of you are offended by being called dad dancers, are you?
I take it as quite the compliment.
Absolutely, 100%.
I've been called a centrist dad politically.
Same. It's like dad dancing and awful dad pun jokes. It's pretty much all I live for now. It's you get to a point, and Joe will find this in 2 or 3 years' time, that all I'm here to do now is to embarrass my children in front of their mates.
I still remember from my dad, whenever we'd go out for dinner, just the dreadful waitress jokes that would come. I'm sure Craig is following up with those.
Yeah, exactly. Mates come round, a couple of jokes at their expense, and away we go. Yeah, it's good fun.
Excellent. And we're going to start with the news and something which isn't a laughing matter. And that's the news that came out on Monday that James Norwood had been charged with drink driving. Obviously, this is inexcusable behaviour from anyone, let alone a professional footballer. But would you expect the club, Joe, to stand by a player and not just get rid of him like some people have maybe suggested on social media?
Well, I think the only problem we've got is that I think if the club could have got rid of him in the summer, they would have done at that point, because it's seemingly not working out from here. But the issue is he's on a good League One wage, and that was a good League One pre-salary cap wage. So putting out the sort of wrongs of this, well, crime, which it literally is, he's someone that we probably wanted out anyway. All this does is make it harder for us to get rid of someone on a higher wage. But ultimately, I do think, like, he was banned from driving, for drink driving, when he was at Forest Green as well a number of years ago. So he's somebody who you don't probably need to sort of extrapolate too hard to say he's got issues with his drinking, or has had issues in the past, or currently has issues. And it does seem that the club probably need to offer him some support and some help to sort of benefit everyone, to benefit him, to make him sort of better as a person, player, professional, whichever way you want to do it, and to help the club by having someone who is clearly a good goal scorer backfiring. But the way things are at the moment, it does seem that nobody's winning out of this, least of all Ipswich Town.
Indeed. And you are just speculating when you say that he might have a drink problem. We'll move on from that one. And on Thursday, a £50 million rescue deal for League One and League Two clubs, not the Championship, from the Premier League, was described by the EFL as some way short of what is required. Craig, can I get your thoughts, first of all, on that offer and the EFL's subsequent rejection? And do you expect there to be a resolution which satisfies all parties? It's just not going to happen, is it?
No, I wouldn't think so. In terms of the offer itself, it wasn't a flat 50, was it? It was 20 in terms of an offer, and then 30 in terms of interest-free loans, wasn't it, or grants, however you want to call it. But if you're splitting that across 40 plus teams, that's not an awful lot when you spread it that thinly. If you think Marcus Evans has come out and says Ipswich Town themselves are going to be approximately £10 million down, at the other end of this with a fair wind. We'll have our £10 million share of it then, and they can spread the £40 million between the rest of them. As you say, I'd imagine there will be another offer come to the table, and we're going to have to. The teams, the EFL, are going to have to accept something. You're not going to look a gift horse in the mouth, and it just depends, I suppose, what sort of caveats are attached to it. But clubs are going to go to the wall here, aren't they? We are in a fortunate position whereby our owners currently footing the bill. There are clubs who don't have such rich owners who are somewhat reliant on getting people into the ground, as we found out to our cost when the league got called off early doors last season. As I say, I think there'll be another offer come in, and it will be accepted purely just to help some clubs survive.
It does seem that the EFL it's almost been a sort of a case of look what you could have won with regard to that project Big Picture, where it was £250 million to the EFL, 25% of future TV rights, and the EFL chairman Rick Parry had negotiated what was sort of on the face of it for the EFL a brilliant deal. Obviously, we all know that there's problems with that, with the power that would have gone to the big six clubs and the potential of what could have gone from there. But ultimately, the EFL, they all unanimously agreed to take the 250 million, and now 250, which is what they need, is now 50. So it's a massive drop from that. And it seems, with regards to the EFL, the project Big Picture, as more has come out in the post, it seems like the bottom end of the Premier League are the clubs which are sort of ruining it for everyone, if that makes sense, because they don't, like the team, your Crystal Palaces, your Brightons, your Fulhams, teams like that don't want to give up their guaranteed 100 million a year. But the reality is the biggest problem in football is the cliff edge between the Premier League and the Championship. And there does need to be a sort of fairer spread of money between the bottom of the Premier League and the top of the Championship. But all these teams, they don't want to give it up. But like I say, looking at the big picture, when you look at if you take out this Big Six having all the votes, the extra loan players, them being able to negotiate their own TV deals for certain games, that sort of thing of it. The actual thing that is put forward is probably best for 75 of the 92 league clubs, but the 15 in the middle that it's not best for are the ones that are able to vote it down, which was almost the problem we had in League One last year. The bigger clubs wanted to play on, and the sort of 14, 15 smaller clubs in the league didn't, and they had the power, and it's the same in the Premier League now.
It's when as you say, it's when you look at the figures. And I had a brief scan through the document that the one that Gary Neville was involved in, and they put a proposal through. And you just look at the figures in the Championship, as you say, Joe. As we all know, the Championship's a basket case, but in terms of the income and the wages to income ratios, it's just way beyond anything in Leagues 1 and 2. Yet, Leagues 1 and 2 are the ones that are suffering from wage caps when, I don't think anybody can come to any sort of solution as to what the hell they can do with the Championship.
Well, the bottom teams in the Premier League get about £100 million a year, and if you want to get rid of parachutes, which seems something that they want to do because it distorts competition, you drop down to about 15 million revenue at the top of the Championship. And it's just like, no business can go from 100 million one year to 15 million the next year. You can't put 85% wage drops in people's contracts and things like that.
Another thing, sorry, Mike. I was saying another thing. I was reading this morning about the knock-on effect of reducing the size of the Premier League down to 18 and stuff. It's just the knock-on effect to the clubs. Clubs have got to drop out of the. You got more clubs dropping out of the Premier League, and the knock-on effect to even the people that work for them and the areas that. As we knew when we were in the Premier League, the boom, the boost it gives to the local economy, and just things like you've got fewer clubs in the Premier League now that will be, well, not now, but that could potentially take advantage of just knock-on effects like that.
Yeah, and there'd be more teams also dropping out of the Football League as well, wouldn't there?
Mm-hmm.
For at least a couple of seasons as well. So, yeah, task for our viewers and listeners is to comment on this video with a fair resolution. And
something everybody can agree to, yeah.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Should be easily done. But yeah, on a slightly cheerier note, it was a good week for the under-23s, Joe. A pretty strong side, first of all, won at Colchester earlier on in the week before a younger side came from 3-0 down at Birmingham to win 5-4. Zach Brown scored a hat-trick. What's your assessment of these two games, Joe? I know you possibly didn't get the chance to watch them because of all of the restrictions and so on. But just a quick question on Zach Brown as well. why is he not considered a first team player?
On Zach, I don't really know why, because he was one that was kicking on, but maybe he's more of he's ended up more as a wide striker, where he was in reality probably a second striker in a 4-4-2, someone who likes to play off a big man, get in, score goals that way, which that role just doesn't really exist so much. So he's having to adapt his game into more of a wide striker role if he wants to push on to first team football, because it's very, very difficult unless you're built like Tyrese Simpson for a young player to come in and play that role in the middle of three strikers, which he sort of had a late chance doing yesterday. But so with the games, it was good that we played Colchester, because it allowed us to play a stronger team. Because if you'd have played Birmingham on the Monday, you wouldn't have sent Jack Lancaster, Armando Dobra up there. They just don't bother with away games. But being Colchester's 20 minutes down the road, it's sort of a decent there. Keenan Bennett's first goal for the club, and go from there. But at this one, because I looked at the team on Friday, and Zach Brown was on a bench for it, and looked at him, it's like there just isn't a striker in the team. And then when you saw us 2-0 down at half time, and they're like, "Oh, Zach Brown's coming on," I was like, "Okay, we're decent," because there was no strike. And then all of a sudden it just went mad, and sort of 2 penalties, Brett McGavin, and a hat trick for Zach. So good. But like I say, hopefully he's one that we'll be able to push on, maybe get a loan somewhere into the non-leagues to try and toughen up a bit. He was at Leiston last year briefly, so we'll see how it goes for him.
That's a good segue for me, because Barry Cotter has been loaned out to Chelmsford, and that happened late on Friday. So this is sort of our deadline day roundup. Ben Falami was heavily linked with a move back to Australia. I haven't read any news about that. I don't know if that's actually happened yet or not. And
from the sounds of it, it's not
it didn't
formally
have to be
happened. No, but I think it's going to happen. Yeah, their league season doesn't start till December. Basically, he's in I think they call them the Olympi Rouge team, their sort of Olympic team, and he needs to go back and play for that. So he's going to go there and have the season at Melbourne Victory. And it sounds like he's already over in Australia and it's a done deal, but it's just not announced yet. I've heard there was another couple of young players, including Tyrese Simpson, who was very close to going out. So I don't know whether the late sort of goings on with regards to Jackson and Hawkins put the kibosh onto that.
Yeah, quite possibly. One man that didn't move on though, Craig, was Armando Dobra, who reportedly turned down a loan move to Crawley Town. Where do you stand on this decision? Because on one hand, it's good that he's showing the fight and showing that he's desperate to get in that Ipswich team, but on the other hand, he's turning down a better opportunity to get minutes under his belt.
Yeah, pretty much exactly that. Because at the end of the day, it would only have been 10 weeks, 2 months worth of loan, wouldn't it? We presumably could have recalled him should we need to in January. It's all power to his elbow that he thinks he's going to break into the team, and maybe he looked at the injuries around and bubbling around and thought, well, I've got a good chance of getting a game here. But issue being is that we're no longer in the League Cup. There's one more match in the EFL. He's going to get 5-10 minutes at the end of matches if he's lucky. He's probably behind Lancaster in that respect to come on and play an attacking midfield role. I can't really see him getting many minutes other than the EFL trophy in a couple of weeks' time. I suppose it depends how is it going to be perceived within the club? Is it, as you say, is it a toss of a coin between, oh well, good luck to him, let's see what he's got, to prove himself here, or, well, come on, mate, you could have done yourself a favour and got yourself probably a dozen or so matches in 10 weeks.
Yeah.
And come back in January, and then you can see how it is, and you could always go out on loan again in January.
Yeah, I think he probably should have gone as well, because he had a chance to get some games. The only thing in his favour is that while it's only 10 weeks, we've got at least 17 games in those 10 weeks with regard, and that's assuming we get knocked out of the trophy and knocked out the FA Cup. So we could easily end up with 20 games between now and January the 1st, which is going to need some rotation in there, isn't it? But I think he had a chance to go. He probably should have taken it, because, like I say, it's only a few weeks, isn't it? And if he'd have ripped it up there, he could have come back, or maybe he would have wanted to stay.
How do we expect Lambert to deal with kind of being rebelled against in a way as well? If Lambert wanted him to go out on loan and he's turned around and said no, that's not going to hold Dobra in particularly good stead with the manager, is it?
I suppose you don't know how the conversations went between them. It could have been because I think there's talk that it was that Crawley play a 4-4-2 and he'd have been a wide man in a 4-4-2, but he sees himself more as a 10 and doesn't want to go and play as a wide midfielder in a 4-4-2. So it might be that there's something along those lines that he wanted to play in a role that suits him a bit more, which does exist at Ipswich, which maybe doesn't at Crawley.
Generation Z, hey Craig.
Oh my God! Yeah, but just as you say, just go out and play football, mate. Doesn't matter, does it? Play right wing, play left back. Do what Alan Judge does and just play every position during a single match. So just go and get 12 games under you, but like your mate has up at Cambridge. Come back in January if you need to. You know, if we all agree, come back in January, we'll sell you. Well, we could send him back on loan to Crawley again. Can't you think that the fact it was all done and dusted pretty much, apart from the final piece of jigsaw to agree to it, I can't imagine it's being looked on particularly well.
And Craig, your son plays youth football. He's a goalkeeper though. Do his teammates claim to be number 10s or cams or CDMs or?
Yes,
they do.
100%. There is a proliferation of numbered cams. Everyone calls it a bloody cam nowadays. Yeah, and they're all cams. And my little boy's 12, going on. He's 13 soon. And he's been playing for 6 years, and nobody. It's completely different to when I was a lad. Nobody wants to be a striker anymore. Nobody wants to be the number 9 goal hanger anymore. You know, you can't get any of the kids. You can't even persuade them to do it and stand up front and stay on the last man. They all want to just play that little drop deep role.
Yeah, I had that problem with my university team because I wasn't in the first couple of teams. They'd have 1 or 2 decent strikers each. There just wouldn't be any others at trials. So you end up just trying to. You end up playing people in a false 9 almost, which is a very strange thing to do, isn't it?
It never works.
Excellent. So this feels like Groundhog Day, Joe. Ipswich women's team won 10-0 again today in the FA Cup against Peterborough. It's not Peterborough United. I don't know if it's affiliated, but obviously another game they're expected to win, but must be doing a lot for the feel-good factor around the club that the under-23s, the men's first team and the women's team are all doing so well.
Yeah, but winning is a habit, isn't it? And any team that starts winning is a good thing to do. Like I know, probably I don't know how much value you get out of these sort of 10-0 wins, and I'm sure the girls don't. I think they were 6-0 up within about half an hour today, so they obviously took their foot off the gas a little bit. But I think that is a bit of an issue with the ladies' team that they should have been promoted last year. They were the best team in the league, but now they've got to go and do it all again. And it's credit how they've started the season that they are looking like doing it all again. I think they've won every game so far in league and cup. And I noticed that
they won against their main rivals, I believe, as well in hashtag, didn't they?
And that's the big deal, isn't it? Because you can be in a league of 10 teams, you can beat 5 of them 10-0. 4 of them are tougher, or 3 of them are tougher games, and 1 is a rival. And with only 1 promotion place, you end up not getting promoted because you've had a couple of bad games. So the fact they've beaten hashtag United and they're beating everyone else is a good thing. But just on that, I noticed that there was 7 players called up for England age group squads in the girls' side last year, and under 19. So well done to Anna Gray, Eloise King, Abby Lafayette, Paige Peake and Sophie Peskett, and then Maddie Biggs and Lucy O'Brien in the under-18s, which shows that the club is doing a hell of a lot right to have 7 girls called up for the England underage squads, because they're up against obviously girls from all the top academies, your Man Cities, your Chelsea, which throw a hell of a lot of money at this.
Yeah, it's good going. Yeah, definitely something to be proud of. So let's move on to Saturday's game, the men's game. Accrington were the visitors to Portman Road. They burst our unbeaten bubble almost a year ago to the day, I believe, early on last season. And they might have been rubbing their hands again when they saw we didn't have a recognised striker in our team, Joe. If you can talk us through that team and explain the big news from that one.
Yeah, well, I saw the team come out and I just flicked through it and I sort of commented, unchanged team, because I just wasn't expecting to look at. I'd looked at the sort of wide strikers, midfielders, defenders, keeper, and all of a sudden I think it was Rich in the WhatsApp said, "What about Hawkins?" And I was like, "Oh fuck, yeah, Hawkins is gone." And then you looked at it, and it was Sears, Judge, and Edwards, and I think everyone assumed it was going to be sort of Edwards on the left, Judge on the right, and Sears through the middle. But then I think Stu Watson and both Stu and Andy said that in the sort of warm-ups, they were doing shape, and it was all with Judge dropping in deep, trying to find runners. Well, and that is how we set up Judge, and they talked about him as a false nine. Lambert said it's the first time he's ever gone out and not played any strikers, but I say it
turning
looks
into a bit
concern.
of a hipster, isn't he, Lambert?
Yeah, I've heard him. He spoke to some German contacts about it, but it sort of played out fairly predictably in the first half, and it didn't really work.
Well, I was going to say, there's very, very seldom is there much unity on Twitter, certainly on the Ipswich Town hashtag, but I don't recall seeing anybody, either once it's sort of filtered through that Judge is going to be a nominally centre forward or false nine, and then as it progressed during the first half, everyone to a man stroke woman was of the opinion that this bloody well isn't working. And you could see it wasn't going to work even before the match started.
Which is handy because we haven't even got into the start of it yet, Craig. I'll just quickly run through the Accrington team for what it's worth. So they were playing a 3-5-2, sort of a similar formation to Milton Keynes against us the other week. So Savin in goal, Burgess, Hughes and Sykes, or Big Sykesy as Mick Mills was calling him, across the back. Uwakwe left wing back, Nottingham of the Salford City documentary fame at right wing back. Then it was Russell, Keneally and Butcher in the middle, with Pritchard and Bishop up top. And yeah, with Judge, you've already sort of mentioned it, Craig, but with Judge up against three giant defenders and Accrington really pressing us hard, working really hard, it proves to be a very difficult first half, didn't it?
Yeah, it did. And as we sort of said it again on the WhatsApp, it's difficult to tell when you're not there in person and you can't see the whole pitch. You know, you're only seeing, if you're lucky, where the ball is on the pitch,
or where the ball was sometimes.
Yeah, or the top of the stand and the girders holding it up. But you say you only see where the ball is, and if the ball's hit forward. And Judge in the limit, you can't even actually tell where Judge is until such time he's in and around the ball. And he was right back. He was picking the ball off of the central defenders, which is fine as long as either one of the central three or two of the central three are getting forward, and then the wide players are getting up and forward. But it was causing the Sears and Edwards were having to get so narrow because there was nobody there up front, and then. The midfield three were all pretty much quiet to a man in that first half. Hughes was very quiet in the first half. Bishop barely got on the ball. But I just think the fact that they didn't have anybody, they're so used to playing and looking up and seeing Hawkins there, and just ping it into him, whether it be to his feet, whether it be to his head. They've got somebody to aim at. But I think it just threw the whole team off in that they were getting the ball, looking up. Certainly someone like Dazelle, who gets the ball, he ping it in quickly into feet. They just didn't have that out ball there, and so everything sort of just stopped and stuttered, and it was a bit more ponderous, and it didn't work. Although saying that, it worked in flashes because Judge did drop deep, didn't he? And he sent Sears through in the inside channel when
I think that was the game plan, that to Judge to drop in and to pick things out. And to be fair to Judge, I thought he did actually play quite well in the first half. He was one of the only players getting on the ball and trying to make things happen, and anything good sort of did tend to come through him, but it just wasn't working as a role for the team. The midfielders had no one to play off. There was no one to just play the ball into. And because of that, the midfield just did not turn up because they had no one to play with, really.
And the thing is as well, we had Edwards on the right, didn't we? Whereas he had a man of the match performance the week before, playing on the left. Everyone's in agreement now. It's his best position. Yeah, he knows it's his best position. He got 2 goals and assists in his best position. Thank God for that. We can hang our hat on the fact he's going to play there again. And he's out on the right. I know he did. To be fair, he did take on his man and got a decent cross in for Sears' chance in the 6-yard box, didn't it? That Sears hit straight at the keeper. But as it showed, Joel talked about it. Second half, playing him in his right position on the left, and he's a different player. Even though, as I say, he's arguably one of the best players we've had so far this season. But it just seems that if you're going to play people out of position, why not play Sears out of position rather than the guy who's proved that he can play left wing the week before.
One thing that I read today that may have come into Lambert's thinking, I can't remember who it was. It's one of, either one of the guys on EADT or TWTD, but they basically said that I think there may have been a consideration that Judge just does not give his fullback enough protection, and that if you'd have had him in front of Chambers with that Uwakwe, who was their main outlet, or trying to protect Kenlock, that maybe we might have been overloaded down the flanks a little bit. So there was almost a case of trying to hide him in a role which didn't affect it, because Sears and Edwards do that dirty work well, but
yeah.
I say
But
ultimately,
there's no reason why
we need to win the game.
You couldn't have swapped Sears and Edwards, though, could you? You could have played Sears out of position. Not that he would have been out of position on the right, and played Edwards in his favoured position on the left, and it may have been better. But as I say, I just think that Judge dropping deep just threw us, because I say we just didn't have that focal point which we'd had for the previous half dozen matches that had worked so very well.
Was he more false than 9? Was he, Craig?
Well, he certainly wasn't 9. But as Joe said, he didn't play badly. He was picking the ball up, but it just left us with a gaping hole at the top of the pitch, which as I said before, everyone knew that we would have before the match started, and it transpired. I just don't understand sometimes why, and perhaps Joe's right in terms of hiding him so he doesn't create so much disturbance in terms of defensive. But how often people just wait until half time to make a change rather than waiting for 25 minutes, half an hour and making a change during the first half. It's always just get to half time. Well, half the match is gone now. Transpired, it didn't matter too much at the weekend, but
I was about to come on to that though. But I mean, last season it wouldn't have been that unbelievable if Lambert just stuck with it out of stubbornness and didn't make the change. As it turned out, he did. With Sears moving into the middle, Judge moving out to the right, and it didn't take long for this slight change in. Well, it wasn't a change in formation or personnel, was it? It was just a couple of changes of position, and it paid dividends pretty early on, didn't it?
Yeah, and I think that just having Sears there, it just kept their defenders honest. Because they had somebody there who was going to sit up there, and we all know Freddie Sears isn't a target man. He's not going to play with his back to goal brilliantly, but he knows how to play as a centre forward, and he did play as one, and it meant that their centre backs had to stay back and stay deep, and ultimately he did drop in, and that led to the goal, which was sort of a very sort of similar and typical goal to sort of how we've been playing all season, where Bishop picks up the ball, he drives forward, he lays it to Kenlock goes to Dazelle, and then Dazelle, like he has done countless times this season, is the one that just fires the ball in, gets a move started, and he fires it into Sears' feet. Sears takes a touch, Edwards is running off him as he's coming off the flank. It looks like it gets a bit of luck, because it looks like the defenders should cut it out. I haven't seen a sort of a replay from another angle of it yet to see how it got through. I know, and I won't. But and then Edwards takes it in and just really confident finish.
Yeah, that's how you describe it now. He's looking confident. He's striking the ball with purpose, isn't he? And going across the keeper as well.
But like I say, it's just a very typical goal to how we've played this season, where we have strung 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 passes together in the build up to it. We have had a couple of players drive and sort of take a player out of the game with a sort of little bit of driving football. And it's the patterns of play, the shape, the movement, the work that we're doing off the ball that leads to these chances.
But it's the wide players playing off the front man. It was a carbon copy of chances we've had with Hawkins there. Don't say, as you said, Joe, it doesn't matter if Sears isn't 6'5", he's still playing that role. He's just dropping a little bit deep, and unlike the first half, Edwards then knew that there was someone. He knew which run he had to make, because he's made it umpteen times before already this season.
Absolutely. And I've been, speaking of Freddie Sears, Craig, I've been a long-term critic of his finishing in front of goal. I find he often gets too close to the goalkeeper before having a shot, and when he does score, it's usually following up a rebound from his own shot. But he had me eating humble pie in the 71st minute, and can you explain why?
Yeah, well, there were 2 chances in the first half, which pretty much sum up your thoughts there, Mikey, weren't there? Where you had the one-on-one, which he took pretty too close to the keeper, and then one on the edge of the 6-yard box, which hit straight at the keeper. But this one here, it was an Accrington throw-in, wasn't it? In the left-back position, they threw it back to the defender, who knocked it into Big Sykesy, who was sitting in the D. And he strode confidently out of defence and passed it straight to Alan Judge, who took a touch and slid in Sears to where Big Sykesy should have been. And as Kendo Kawasaki has said on Twitter, it was dinked over the keeper. I do prefer a bit more. Is it a parabola? A bit more loft on my dinks. It's a bit of a shallow dink, wasn't it?
Was it a chip or a dink?
Yeah.
I'd probably call it a chip.
Yeah, a dink needs more loop, doesn't it?
Yeah, that was a chip.
Yeah. Anyway, ended up in the goal.
A chip, a dink, or a lob.
Yeah, we could argue about that one for hours as well, couldn't we? Nolan then replaces Hughes, who I don't think had his best performance of the game, but minutes in the legs. Before Bennett and Simpson came on pretty late for Judge and Sears, respectively. But we see the game out pretty comfortably. Thomas Holy didn't really have an awful lot to do. So 2-0, top of the league, 5 wins and a draw, and a goal difference of plus 11. Before we go into the Twitter questions, Joe, I have a quick question for you. You were, and maybe this was tongue-in-cheek, but you were very much enjoying the 100 goals, 100 points this time a year ago. Can I ask, are you more cautious this time around, or privately you straight back into that mindset, you're just not as public about those feelings?
I think last year it was just sort of a bit of a joke, really, wasn't it? And the way we were
it was
the way we were getting results, because we just were not playing well last year. We weren't creating a lot, and I don't think sort of anyone can accuse us of talking with sort of hindsight here, because this was stuff that was brought up regularly on the pod, that we were winning games, but we were doing enough. But it's like we're building ourselves a good platform to build from here, but we need to be doing more. Where I'd say that's the opposite this year, in that every game we've played, if you look at the first half, for an example, yesterday, we were probably as poor as we've been. I didn't watch the MK game, which I think was another poor one, but we were very poor against Accrington. And if we'd have gone in behind at the break, I don't think anyone would have been sort of, well, not disappointed, but I don't think anyone could have really argued with it, because they did look the better side. But ultimately, the best 2 chances in that half both fell to Freddie Sears. So and one of them, they both fell from good bits of play. One, Judge dropping in, taking a touch and playing a perfect ball to him, and the other one, Edwards, sort of having an opportunity to cross in, there's no one in there, then standing up his fullback, getting round him, or going through him almost, and then not picking someone out, putting the ball in a dangerous area once we got men in the box. So I just think that we just did not create anywhere near enough chances last year, even when we were winning games. But this year, almost every game, you can say, look, there's 4, 5, 6 good chances we've had that all could have ended up in goals. So I'm a lot more bullish now than I was last year, but maybe not publicly, because I just have such a fear that Lambert is going to screw it up because of what happened last year. But I know we can sort of pick faults at little things, and the setup of the front three we all thought was wrong yesterday, and it turned out that it changed. But ultimately, he won the game. So I can almost say he hasn't really put a foot wrong with sort of selection or style this year.
And the thing is, well, even though Accrington did have a lot of the ball in the first half, every single chance they had was from outside the box, wasn't it? It wasn't as if they were scything us open, and Holy was having to chuck himself in the.
They only had one shot in the box in the whole game.
Yeah, it was all outside the box, all pretty speculative. And Mick Mills was saying, "Oh, well, you can't keep having them shoot." Well, okay, one might fly in the top corner, but you'd hope that your goalkeeper will be saving the vast majority of shots that are from 25 yards out.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll move on to the questions from our esteemed listeners now. We'll start with a Paul Lambert one, and I'll go to you, Craig. Mouth11 asks, why did it take an experienced manager like Lambert this long to realise playing a settled formation / pattern of play would produce better results than last season's pick and mix tactic? I mean, do you think it was maybe Lambert losing his mojo a little bit, trying to be too smart, or was he being too stubborn, or basically did we just have a problem? We never played well, so we had to keep changing it.
Yeah, well, this time last year, when we were in a similar sort of position and things started to go a bit awry, I said on the pod, I hope he's as clever as he thinks he is, and it transpired that he wasn't. I just thought he tried to be too clever last year, and it ended up confusing. It ended up confusing the players. These players, and Joe said it many times. These players aren't Premier League players. Yeah, they don't want to be bombarded with tactics and systems, certainly not different one every single time they play and walk out on the pitch. Just keep it simple. These guys have grown up playing 4-4-2 probably in the main. So if you can just drill it into them, keep it simple, don't alter things too much. You've seen the results so far. Yeah, we're playing the same way, and teams know how we're going to play, and still can't seem to stop us. As Joe says, creating good chances every single match. And we are keeping other teams at arm's length at the same time. So.
Do you think he maybe took a bit of a step back during lockdown and everything and thought, I just need to go back to basics. I've got the players here. Or do you think maybe he's been influenced by somebody else, Leo Neal or Marcus Evans, for instance?
Well, possibly. But I would hope that he's just had a bit of introspection and thought to himself, well, I probably have got one of the better. We hope is one of the better squads, certainly some of the better players. And if I keep it simple and play to their strengths, which we are at the moment, then let's just leave it like that. Don't touch it. It's not broken. Let's not worry about fixing it.
I think there was an element, because it was a quote that we pulled up a number of times here, and I know it is put in the paper by Stuart Watson, picked up a number of times, but it was an interview with Nick Ames that Lambert had, and it talked about Roger Schmidt, who was a Bayer Leverkusen manager, I think he's elsewhere now, but saying, I was changing from 3 to 4 to 5 at the back, and he spoke to him and he said, well, what are you doing? The players aren't going to understand it, and I now get that, and I'm not going to go away from it. Well, he did last year, and I think sort of you could probably make a case for a lot of the decisions he made last year. I thought they were wrong at the time and stand by it, but I think it's just a case that Norwood and Jackson looked good in pre-season, so he wanted to play two strikers on the pitch. We then were struggling to get hold of games in midfield, so he then wanted to have 3 central midfielders, but wanted to keep the 2 strikers, so we did that. And then when Vincent Young got injured, it's like, well, Garber, I want to get him in the team, but I can't get him in the team if I play. So you can see how he came to the sort of solutions he did, but you could also see how the players were confused by it, and it did seem that we were just trying to put out our best 11 players on the pitch and rely on their quality as opposed to sort of there. But this year, you can just see the players are talking about it. We've learned from it, the pattern to play. We're doing the same thing in training every week, and it's becoming intuitive to the players. Just you can watch our highlights from our games, and you can see how they move, and you can see that there's almost not even thinking about it. And I know having sort of Dizelle and Bishop in there helps, because they're 2 ball players that have played a lot of football together and they know each other's runs and that sort of academy style which we've had. But it's just them getting to know each other's games, and when somebody's coming into the team, like yesterday, Freddie Sears went up front and he's playing up front on his own, which is not something he's done a huge amount of times in his career, but he knows how he's got to play it. And when we're sort of decimated with injuries in that position, the fact we still set up the same way shows that it's here to stay, and the players are going to adapt to it, and they are doing so far.
Such a pro, Joe, that you've just answered the next question already from FPL Tractor, because he observed that it felt more like last season, the Accrington game that is, where we mainly relied on having better players in the key moments. He says that's okay every so often, but last season showed you can't rely on it. But I think you've just said that that's not really the case now that we have a formation and a style of playing. So I'll move on to the next question.
Well, almost say like last season that Sears puts away one of those chances in the first half. We then don't change anything and we win 1-0 and we haven't played well. We don't change it at half time. We just sit on the 1-0 goal and they're not good enough to score.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. Mark Beck asks, there's a bit more to it than just a question. He said, drinking game, rewatch the game and take a shot every time Mick Mills says big Sykesy. You could probably do that with this podcast as well, because we've all adopted it as well.
At one time, he nearly he compared him to Alan Hunter and another Alan Hunter and Jack Charlton. He compared him to at one point in the first half.
Yeah,
absolutely loving him and his clearances. So Mark says, a woeful first half had me worried, but it seems Town have grown a backbone and have a clinical edge. I mean, this is all things that we've already discussed. Who's changed more this season, though, the players or Lambert? I'll go to you first, Joe, because the last one was actually Craig's question.
Well, it's definitely Lambert, isn't it? Because ultimately, the players, they had good patches, they had bad patches. We had a couple of little runs after the very good run at the start, but ultimately, picking the same formation, the same style, and playing the same way every week. I know there's little tweaks in it, whether it's 4-3-3 to a 4-2-3-1, but ultimately we're basically doing the same thing. But the only thing I'd say, sort of on the flip side to that, is after that MK Dons game, which was a poor performance by all accounts, we bounced back with a really good game against Blackpool the following week. After the poor first half yesterday, we bounced back straight away. So the confidence doesn't seem to sap out the team like it did and has done for the last 2 or 3 years.
And that's because the players are seeing fruits of their labour, aren't they? They're seeing that it works, so they've got trust and they've got confidence in the formation and the system and the style. They've seen that it works. So and it goes back to the first game this season, the Bristol Rovers game, where we just kept at it, didn't we? We just kept at it. We had it was 0-0 at half time, but we just kept playing the same way, playing the same way, and the result came. And I just think that's just built, and the players are seeing that it's working. So they've got confidence that it's going to work regardless of who's in what position.
I'm enjoying this positivity, because the last time I was on with you, Craig, was a couple of weeks ago after Milton Keynes, and everything felt slightly different. I'm going to test your League One knowledge a little bit here, Craig. Which other League One teams have good finishers? Asks Cornish Mariner. He says that Accrington had chances, but only once did they look like scoring. So who has good finishers in the league?
Well, Milton Keynes have just got Cameron Jerome, haven't they? So
yeah,
he scored, didn't he? So yeah, there's
is
probably
he a good finisher? I suppose he is at League One level.
He's better than what they had.
Yeah, he's a good striker. He's a good striker. I'm not suggesting he isn't a good striker at League One level, but I don't know if finishing is his bag.
Yeah, I don't know. Peterborough, you'd say, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
I don't know who's scoring Hull's goals at the moment, but they're scoring plenty of them, aren't they? Wilkes got 2 yesterday. And it's always the thing in the back of your mind, isn't it? And it's mentioned plenty of times by the fans, is we haven't yet, appreciate Accrington we're in the top 6, but we haven't yet played Hull, we haven't yet played Portsmouth, but we can only beat what's in front of us. So I'd argue that Accrington didn't really have that many chances. So as we said before, they're all from long range. So yeah, we're not relying on them missing their chances at the moment. Let's wait till we've played Doncaster, maybe.
Yeah, that's a good point. We don't have long to wait from now. Mullet's ever consistent with a question. I'll come to you, Joe. He says another dreadful half of football, but an excellent turnaround and result. Do we give Lambert more credit, or accept that compared to the rest of the division, Ipswich just haven't been hit by the effects of lockdown as severely as our rivals?
Well, I do think we are a team that's come out of lockdown in a strong position than most of our rivals, because we had a lot of players contracted till the end of next season. So we only, out of sort of regular players last year, what we've lost, Danny Rowe, who wasn't that regular, Luke Garbutt, and Will Keane, who wasn't that regular. So it's not like I say, when you look at teams even like Accrington yesterday, some of these teams are decimated by COVID because they had to lose their players, go year to year, and were decimated. Well, we haven't. Our squad churn, we're the lowest squad churn in the league according to Experimental 361's Twitter feed. We were the 90% of the minutes that we played last year, those players are still in the squad. So there's definitely an element that we are settled, but on the flip side, we weren't settled on anything last season. So it's not like we picked up a formation, we played well for the last few months of the season, missed out on promotion, and then we can go again this year. We had to have a total reset. We just have the same bodies in the building.
Absolutely. I was just doing a quick Google of Danny Rowe because I was sure that I saw him on EFL on Quest last night.
He hasn't got
he's nowhere yet. No.
Yeah. No. When I Googled, I realised there's another Danny Rowe kicking about in the lower leagues at Oldham. Tim Pashley asks Craig. He's also very consistent, always gets a question in. They're normally quite different to what Mullet sends in. He asks, fan lockout and promotion, or be let in and take your chances, your choice. I mean, it's just promotion at all costs, isn't it?
Yeah, it has to be, doesn't it?
It'd be a shame. I mean, it won't be a shame. It'll be fantastic if we get promoted, but it would kind of be a shame if our one good season in 20 is one where we're
but if it's your one good season in League One getting League One promotion. It's not. I'm sure I could miss it. I could miss it.
On the other side of that,
cost.
One of the only good things about League One is going to the different grounds and stuff, which we haven't been able to do.
Get to see the different styles of cameramen, don't we?
Well, it's always the same at Portman Road.
It was funny yesterday. You could tell the exact moment the guy or girl in charge of the camera was checking their phone, weren't they? Because about half an hour in for that corner. Yeah. They thought, I'll just check the old Twitter feed while the camera's just drifting up towards the stand.
Brilliant. Ipswich John, the first half was not too similar to Rotherham away last year, a match where we were dominated for 90 minutes. Does the second half show that Lambert now has the flexibility to tweak the team, as we now have a style of play and a pattern of play as a foundation we can build on? We've talked about this quite a lot, haven't we, Joe? He's spot on, isn't he?
I think it's just making sure that the players have the confidence to keep trying to play, because a lot of times in the first half, Holy had the ball and went long, and I know people said, we were being pressed quite hard, but ultimately the centre-backs had dropped back. They had enough space to take the ball, and you can hear the reaction from the bench often. And at one time, Holy played the ball short, and you'd hear a lot of sort of clapping and not cheering for them, not sarcastic cheering, but like, do that again. That's what you're supposed to be doing. And I think he must have been told that at half time, because his distribution was much better in the second half, because it was pretty poor in the first half.
The thing is, I think he just a lot of the time he deals in such fine margins, doesn't he? He's always aiming for chambers on the wing, and he's only got a narrow corridor to ping it in. But for a guy, he literally can effortlessly stroke it about 80, 90 yards, can't he?
Yeah, it's incredible, isn't it?
Phenomenal.
Well, often he effortlessly strokes it into about row K.
Yeah, but he's still doing it 80, 90 yards.
Brilliant. Thomas Ebeling, the big question is, how is Lambert going to manage the squad over the next 5 games, Craig? Who do we need to play regularly, and who can we afford to rest?
Yeah, that is a good question.
And when would you rest them as well? I'm guessing Doncaster's one that we can't afford to rest players for.
No, well, we can only afford to rest players that we've got people to replace their positions, haven't we, at the moment? And all of a sudden, from having a squad which can play 3 11s worth of central midfielders, we're down to having the bare bones for one. So I suppose it's also integral. Who's integral to the way we play? You'd probably say Dizelle is integral to the way we play, isn't he? The other 3 midfielders,
the CDM.
Yes, quite. The other 2 midfielders, you could make an argument for rotating Nolan, Judge, Bishop, Hughes, Dobra, Push sort of thing. But I think Dizelle, that's the one. Dizelle's the one that makes us tick. And we sort of showed at the weekend that we can sort of get by without that tall central striker. I'd much prefer it if he was there. Edwards is becoming pretty integral to the way we play if he's played in the right position.
Got Lancaster and Bennett that can help fill in the wide roles.
Yeah, I think Dizelle makes us tick, doesn't he?
Might just be a case of bringing the subs on slightly earlier for the next few games.
Yeah.
At this stage of the season, a lot of them probably will be able to get to play a few games in a row, but it's just a case of not forcing them to play 90 minutes. You mentioned Dizelle.
Sorry, Mikey, do you think Nolan would probably start, wouldn't he, Tuesday instead of Hughes? Maybe just to freshen up.
I think it would be
Bishop,
it would be strange it would be strange if Hughes did play 2 games in 4 days after not looking particularly fit for the last couple of games, but who knows? So Dennis Sullivan's question, Joe, am I allowed to be impressed by Dizelle's defensive application today being yesterday, the Accrington game? I believe that is the biggest difference in him this season.
He's definitely putting himself about, and he's really trying. Sometimes he gets turned too easily because it's not his natural game, and he gets drawn to the ball. But he's a ball player, and anything we get from him defensively is a bonus. And it's probably why he hasn't played so much, because he hasn't been doing that. But I'd say he's a member at the same gym I go to, and he's often up there trying to bulk up and things like that. He was like throughout lockdown, he was always up there. So he's not someone who is sort of just floating about on his talent. He's someone that is working hard and working all the time during the season you see him up, he's just like I say, you don't hear much from him in the press, but he's a very dedicated pro.
One of the chances that Accrington had in the first half, he was the guy that was chasing their guy back when he took an early shot against Holy. So I'll be impressed with him, to be fair. As you say, he's been throwing himself into a few tackles, which shows confidence in his own body as well, more than anything else, doesn't it? Which is a good thing.
Absolutely. Oliver Friston asks, Craig, should Lambert have made the subs sooner? With a lot of games to come and an injury-ravaged squad, getting some key people off with 20 minutes left would have been sensible. Instead, Simpson got 2 minutes. Were you a little bit baffled by that? At 2-0 up, the game looking pretty much won?
Yeah, maybe. I'm not too fussed, to be fair. I think the first and foremost, just get the game won. And I think, you'd imagine the stick he'd have got had he made a couple of substitutions. Well, Milton Keynes, for example, he made substitutions early then and got his arse bitten, didn't he? So I'd imagine that may well have had an effect on having normal later substitutions yesterday. But I can't say it really struck me as being a strange thing. Simpson's very raw. It was working well, wasn't it? We were creating opportunities. Bennett had 2 or 3 chances, didn't he? Both sides.
You'd like to see earlier subs on Tuesday night, though. Yeah,
and I think we will, because as I say, the guys might be flagging a little bit earlier than they were at the weekend. But as I say, it didn't strike me as anything untoward at the weekend. I think it's just a case of getting the job done before we worry about anything.
Yeah, because if you bring Simpson on in the 80th minute and then you concede in the 81st, you've got 15 minutes and the ball bounces off him a couple of times up front, and you're just going to sit back and get deeper and deeper. So I think he did. I know he was only on for a couple of minutes, but he got quite involved, didn't he, when he was on there, Simpson. So it was good to give him a little run out. But ultimately, I think maybe if you had Hawkins on the bench or Jackson on the bench, that change might have been a bit earlier with somebody that you can trust a bit more.
And I say Bennett's got himself into 2 or 3 good positions. Didn't make the right choice, probably arguably on any of the 3 chances he had, but he did show that he was getting in and he was direct with the ball, wasn't he? He was cutting in and having shots, and probably should have passed it when we were breaking like 3-on-2, weren't we, at one point? But it shows good signs.
Yeah, good signs indeed. Blue Soap wants us to show some love for Kenlock. He says he's looked pretty solid for the last couple of games. So I'll ask James Chidwick's question to you, Joe. Is the lack of crowd... We've had quite a few questions like this, but I think they're still relevant. Is the lack of crowd helping the likes of Toto and Kenlock? And also great to see Chambers playing so well.
I don't think we'll ever know, because ultimately, without a parallel universe going on, knowing what's happening here, you just can't say it's better. But
maybe after Kenlock struggles at Milton Keynes, coming back to playing 2 games at an empty Portman Road, probably a little bit easier than defending the North Stand in the first half, where they're going to.
Sorry, Mike.
I
think NCR, without a doubt, 100% NCR has benefited from not having a crowd there, because you just know what the crowd would be like. The ball's knocked out to him 10 yards out, and he either scuffs out a player, or he knocks it straight to one of their players, which he has done, a fair few times so far. You know what he'd about, and he'd just go into a downward spiral. Whereas it hasn't got on top of him, and he's been throwing himself in the way of balls and getting into challenges and winning headers. I think if anyone, NCR has benefited 100% from not having the crowd.
But it's a difference, not that when he's making mistakes they're not being punished, because it did seem that, especially in the Championship season, he gives away a silly free kick against Rotherham in the corner. They score from it. He flies into a tackle against Sheffield Wednesday, gets a red card, does something, gives away a penalty. And that one, like yesterday, where he heads the ball back to the keeper, he hasn't seen the striker there. And if that striker nips in, scores, does his head drop at that point? Is it that he's not getting punished for his mistakes, or is it that the crowd aren't giving him a groan? I just
think the crowd would have given him a groan, even if these things don't lead to goals. I just think it just builds up. Even if it's not obvious, it just gets picked up, and does it? Just there's an atmosphere, there's an edginess when he gets the ball inside the 18-yard box, rightly or wrongly.
There's nothing wrong with being a lucky footballer as well.
No, better to be lucky than good. I think MJ Miller, our friend up in Scotland, might have been on the tonic wine. Buckfast, maybe other tonic wines are available. He asks, with the great start to the season in mind, where do you think we'll need to strengthen? And how far do you think we'll get in the Europa League next year, since we'll qualify via the FA Cup? over the course of an unbeaten season this year. Winky face, Craig. So I think that we'll go with the proper question. Where do you think we'll need to strengthen? So,
Well,
is he talking about next summer, or we'll go with January? Let's go for the January window.
oh crikey. Well, at the moment, I'm not entirely sure. Maybe a right back if Vincent Young isn't coming back anytime soon. Maybe a left back if Ward's 1 week out, which is now currently at 3, extends any. I think we're probably a little bit short in the fullback areas if that's the case. If not, you've already got able substitutes who are already playing. I think our squad's good enough as it is. I don't see any. What Joe was pointing out yesterday was the amount of players that we've got out of contract. So he may not have any choice but to improve the squad or look to improve the squad if Joe can reel off his fact about how many of the starting 11 were out of contract in the summer.
I can't remember exactly, but Holy might not be, but I think it was like 9 or 10 of the starting 11 are out of contract. And I think the only one outfield player that isn't is Miles Kenlock. So it's a big concern, really, because these players, we almost have to get promoted before we can sort any contracts out because of the salary cap. What's it going to be? Well, we'll give you anyone who's playing well £2,000 a week to stay in League One, and if we get promoted, you'll get 6. Well, hang on a minute, I'll just wait and see if you get promoted or not, and if you do, I'll sign it, and if not, I'll sign somewhere else. Yeah. If Guion Edwards gets 15 goals, if Teddy Bishop gets 12 goals, if Andre Giselle keeps playing as he is, if John Nolan, I think he's up this year. I say it's what can you do though? We're in this position because of what's gone on previously, and there's no excuses to be made. But the salary cap coming into this league is going to kill us if we don't get promoted this season. We're going to lose the whole team.
Is that positive enough for you, Mikey?
Doomsday scenario, yeah. Let's go through the. Let's pretend that Joe hasn't just said that, and let's go through the other results. So Cameron Jerome, as you mentioned, helped Milton Keynes to a 2-0 win over Gillingham. Peterborough won 2-0 against bottom-placed Oxford United.
Don't give your manager a new 5-year contract.
Don't give your manager a new 5-year contract. Frank Nublet scored his first league goal for Plymouth as they beat fellow League One new boys Northampton Town 2-1.
I hear on the EFL show that people were questioning his contribution, weren't they, unbelievably to the team.
Yeah, I find that hard to believe because Nubel, as we know him, is always a hard worker. But
just can't control the football, can he, or shoot straight? So maybe that's what they were questioning.
Quite possibly. Scored in this game, though. Doncaster scored a late winner away at Portsmouth. Their right back, Reece James, not that one. Maybe a player to watch out for. Fleetwood, a rare 0-0 for them against high-flying Lincoln. Looks like Fleetwood are maybe finding their feet. Crewe won, Blackpool won. Blackpool's still struggling. Grant Ward did score his first league goal for Blackpool.
Plastered it all over Instagram.
He did, yeah.
Well done, Grant.
Well done, Grant. Hull City won 3-0 at Rochdale, so it looks like they are there to stay. They are the real deal. Bristol Rovers drew 1-1 with Burton. The Swindon lot lost 2-0 at home to Sunderland. Sunderland look like they might be the real deal, but you just never know.
It's easy up against lazy little slugs, though, isn't it?
Shrewsbury won 1-0 away at Wimbledon. I think that was a really late goal in that one. Wimbledon, of course, playing at Loftus Road. And Charlton won 1-0 against Wigan. So not such good results for the teams that we've beaten so far this week. So let's look at the league table after 6 games. There we are at the top. Played 6, won 5, drew 1, goals 4, 13. We're averaging over 2 points and scoring over 2 goals per game. Hull only 1 point behind us, though. Then it's Lincoln, who've lost 1 and drawn 1. Peterborough found their way back up there. Sunderland the 5th. Then it's Plymouth. Doncaster always seems to be about 7th. It's crazy. Hopefully they'll be lower than that after Tuesday's game. Then it's Gillingham, who always appear to be 8th. Accrington are still 9th, and Portsmouth, after pretty poor defeat for them. I mean, they've had an awful start to the season, but still a 10th. They're not that far behind us.
Better start than they had last year, though.
Yeah.
It's saying about NCR benefiting from there not being a crowd. I think Kenny Jackett's benefiting from there not being a crowd as well.
I think unless the game's going on at the moment, unless Aston Villa beat Leicester tonight, we have the best points per game record in the whole Football League at the moment.
And points per game is very, very important, as we know.
End it now.
End it now. We'll end the show now as well after some plugs. I'm going to start by encouraging our listeners and viewers to follow our old mate Stat's new Twitter handle. His old account was deactivated by some slugs. He's now at CallMeStat. And while he might not be everyone's favourite Twitter user, I think he's a must follow for any Town fan. If you're watching on YouTube, please make sure you hit like on this video and are subscribing. And that's partly so you won't miss out on the next live stream, which I believe is this time happening ahead of the Doncaster game rather than after. I think Benjamin Bloom is going to be talking to a fellow YouTuber, a YouTube friend from Doncaster. So, yeah, keep an eye out for that on Tuesday. Subscribe and ring the bell, and then it will come up automatically. And you can distract yourself from... You can just call your working day over as soon as that starts on Tuesday. So, yeah, before we go, any last words from you both? Anything either of you two want to plug?
No, not for me.
No. Any last words?
More CFs and fewer CAMs.
Excellent. Okay, good night and wish for whatever you like.
This